So there was a question that I received on last week's sermon, and I figured if somebody had that question, I'm sure there might be more who have that question. So I figured I would go ahead and answer said question. Is that okay? So when I mentioned accept Christ last week, I wanted to find my term real fast just to cover it, and then we'll move on. But when I say accept Christ, what do I mean? What I mean by that is two things. I think number one, that means believe in Christ. But James tells us that the idea of what it means to be a Christ follower is more than just belief. If I'm not mistaken, he says even the demons do that. So I think there's a second part to that, which is submission. And what submission is, and I thought I made that clear in the invitation, but it's to believe and to submit to Christ, and we submit to Christ in baptism. So that's what I mean when you hear me say accept Christ. That is what I mean. Instead of going out and saying believe and submit, we're going to use one word, okay? That's what I mean by that. So if you have any questions on that, my phone number is in the directory. You know where I work. Most of you know where I live. Come see me. Okay, so moving on. So we're continuing on our series on prophecies that lead us to Jesus Christ. And before we do that, I want to talk about movies. Now, one thing I miss a lot since having two kids is going to the movies consistently. Like before we had children, we were moviegoers. Is anyone a moviegoer here? 4 of you, 5 of you, thank you. So you understand how it feels that you need to go to the movie, get your popcorn and your drink, and sit down and enjoy a good show. That's like one of my favorite things to do. It might even be one of my love languages. I don't know, but it's pretty close to it. And you know, being a guy, there's a certain kind of movie that guys like. Now, I've also realized my wife does not like going to those movies. But you know, usually there's some kind of battle or war in there. Okay, it's just I don't know what it is. It's called being a guy, I guess. And the really good ones, there's this. They have this battle, and all seems like it's lost. And it looks like the heroes are about to be defeated, and then out of nowhere, the cavalry comes. And what looks like is mutual defeat is now the greatest victory. And a great example of that is actually from this movie. Some of you know what movie this is. Others of you do not, and that would mean you're not a nerd. My wife would not know, but it's the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings. There's this moment in this battle where all seems lost. They're literally they've retreated as far back as they can, and they're now on horses, and they're saying we're going to go in and we're going to fight till the very end. And then all of a sudden you have Gandalf, and he comes with all of these troops, and the day is saved, and there's hope and there's peace, and the heroes win the day. That is my favorite kind of scene, is when all seems lost, and yet there is a victory that comes in the end. And this morning, what I want to do is I want to talk about a text where really all seems lost. And it doesn't look good for the line of David, and things are going bad, and it looks like there will not be on the throne of Judah someone from the line of David. But God has other plans for that. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the text before we get to the text. So, number one, what's happening in our text is there's this big empire out there. They're called the Assyrian Empire. And the Assyrians are at war with Syria and Ephraim. Now, Ephraim is what we need to know is that is the kingdom of Israel. There's even talks that they're at war with Samaria, which Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. So these two nations are trying to get the kingdom of Judah to come and help them with their battle against Assyria. And what's happening is that they're refusing to go and back them up, because what the kingdom of Judah knows is that, hey, we might not make it if we go and we try and fight this empire. And so that's what's going on here. And in this, there's an issue. Syria and Ephraim are not happy that Judah is not going to help them with their battle. So what do? Well, what anybody does. I want you to help me. So the best way that I'm going to get a more favorable thing is I am going to go to war with the kingdom of Judah, and I am going to destroy the king, and then I'm going to place somebody in the king's spot who will be more favorable to our cause. In other words, we're going to get what we want no matter what. Now, in parenting, that might mean that your youngest went and asked mom if she could have cookies. And then when mom said no, she went to dad, who said yes. That's child speak of what might be actually happening. But no, we're going to remove King Ahaz from the throne. And then God goes to Isaiah, and he gives him the words, and he says, I need you to go speak to King Ahaz. And he says, bring your son, his name literally means a remnant shall remain, and tell them that I am not going to let you see defeat. The text calls them these two smoldering stones. And God is not going to allow them to destroy the line of David. Because for those of you who know, who are familiar, God made a promise to David, did he not? He said, as long as there is someone who's from the line of David, as long as Judah's a nation, there will be someone from the line of David who is sitting on the throne. Now, I don't want to say forever, because we know what history tells us. So God has already made the promise to the line of David that he will protect his line throughout all time. And so God tells Isaiah, you can even tell them to ask for a sign. And I will show you that sign. And King Ahaz, and if you were wondering what I'm going through chapter-wise, it is Isaiah chapter 7. I should have told y'all that from the beginning. And if you want a sign, you can have one. And of course, Ahaz, it says, oh no, I don't need a sign. And you might think that Ahaz is being pious. He's saying, I have all my trust and faith in God. And yet, Isaiah would want us to believe that no, it's his lack of faith that has brought them to this situation. And yet, God will give a sign. And that's what we're going to pick up in our Bibles. So if you have your Bibles, turn with me over to Isaiah chapter 7. We're going to be looking at verses 14 through 25. Again, that's Isaiah chapter 7, verses 14 through 25. So Isaiah chapter 7, starting in verse 14, says this, therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Immanuel. He will be eating curds and honey when he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right. For before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you will dread will be laid to waste. The Lord will bring on you and on your people and on the house of your father a time unlike any since Ephraim broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Syria. And in that day, the Lord will whistle for flies from the Nile, the delta in Egypt, and for bees from the land of Assyria. They will all come and settle in the steep ravines and in the crevices in the rock, on all the thorn bushes and all the water holes. In that day, the Lord will use a razor hired from beyond the Euphrates River, the king of Assyria, to shave your head and private parts and to cut off your beard also. In that day, a person will keep alive a young cow and 2 goats. And because of the abundance of the milk they give, there will be curds to eat. All who remain in the land will eat the curds and honey. And in that day, in every place where there were 1,000 vines worth of 1,000 silvers of shekels, there will only be briars and thorns. Hunters will go there with bow and arrow, and for the land will be covered with briar and thorns, as for all the hills once cultivated by the hoe, you will no longer go there for fear of the briars and thorns. They will become places where cattle are turned loose and where sheep run. Now, what's interesting is as we get to this point and God is giving this sign, he says in our English translations, the virgin will give birth. Now, what's interesting, and I do need to mention this, or I would not be doing my job, is the original Hebrew for that is actually translated to young woman will give birth, and you will call the child Immanuel. Now, Jews have argued that it doesn't say virgin, therefore it can't be Mary. Now, what's interesting, though, is that does not remove Mary from the equation, because was Mary not a young woman? So it still prophesies about Mary, in my opinion, and I think all Christians would probably agree, and I believe Matthew, who quoted this verse, would also agree. So I think I'm in good company. So this is the sign that God has got a plan. He says there is going to be a child, and you will name that child. That child's name will be Immanuel, God with us. And do you not think in the moment where King Ahaz is sweating bullets that he might need the comfort of knowing that Immanuel is going to be with him? When he's worried that, hey, there are 2 kingdoms that are currently trying to go to war with us and want more than anything to remove me from the throne. And yet, God is going to bring a boy named Immanuel. And I love this because I think realistically what God is doing here, and I think this is going to be the whole purpose of the sermon, is to give us a message for today. And I think the message back then is very important for us today, just as it was back then, and I think it's been important for all eternity, is this. Is before the boy eats solids, it will be over. Or before the boy knows right or wrong, it will be over. In other words, you spend all of this time worrying about this catastrophe that's coming, and yet what God is saying is, I've got this. You're worrying about the destruction of Judah. You're worrying about the destruction of your legacy. And what God is saying is that by the time this boy is born, it will just be something that is barely remembered in the history books. How many near catastrophes have we seen in our lives today? In our lives over the last, I'm 32, that I've been told the world is going to end. I can think of 2 actually 3, because wasn't there one just recently? Let's see, there was 1999, And then there was 2012, the year I graduated from high school. The world was ending. It was great. I just finally got the point where I was going to graduate from high school, and it would make sense. I spent pretty much my whole life going to school, only to die in a month. Okay, that's what I was being told on the news. And yet there's all of these things that we have worried about, and yet here we are still standing. We've seen disease, we saw the COVID-19 pandemic, and here we are, we're still standing, and God has not destroyed the world yet. And so we have hope and we have peace because God is with us. And I think that is the same message that God is given to Isaiah to give to God is given to Isaiah to give to Ahaz, is that God is with you. God's not going to allow you to fall. God's not going to allow you to be in ruin. He is still king of the universe. He is still creator of the universe. And you need to stop worrying. Because by the time this child is eating curds and honey and knows right from wrong, this will be long gone. It's not forever. And this is not the end. And it's another thing that there will be a day where God will make things right, where things will be good. And it's funny when we think about how God uses entities or countries and things like that to do His will, because God used the Assyrians to help start the correction for the corruption that was happening in Samaria. Where the kings were murdering each other and overthrowing each other left and right. And all God told them to do, that if you will obey me and be faithful, I will bless you and your line will be forever. Now, of course, as we've read our Bible, the northern kingdom of Israel did really good at that, right? No. They had the same struggles. They continued to want to be like other nations, and they kept striving to do that, and there were not as many good kings, and some of you are like, well, Darian, didn't the southern kingdom of Judah do the same thing? Yes, but David was a man after God's own heart, and God made the covenant with David that if David would be faithful. And David is the image of what they say perfect king. We all know he's far from perfect, but God still uses imperfection. But God is going to use Assyria to handle and work through and punish, but also bring safety for the kingdom of Judah as well. And so God is going to use Assyria, and how He's going to do this, and how He's going to use Assyria to bring peace. We get this long section towards the end of chapter 7 about what God is going to do. And I just want to I just want you guys to reflect on some of these images and how much shame those are, especially in that time. He said the king of Assyria will shave your head, your private parts, and to cut off your beard. In that time, there was no bigger shame than to have somebody grab you by your, is this goatee? I can't grow one. To grab you by your goatee and cut it off. And to shave your head. God is saying that you thought that you could continue on disobeying. You thought that you could carry on doing what you've been doing and think that I would not notice and I would not do something. And God does handle the kingdom of Israel. He allows them to go into exile by the Assyrian Empire. And of course, it's about 200 years later that the southern kingdom of Judah, God would also allow to go into exile as well. But you cannot disobey God. But God does have a plan. He does not allow His people to be in desolation and destruction forever. That He does have a plan, that there will be a baby that is born from a virgin, and His name will be Immanuel, God with us. And he will be with the king of Judah in this time, just as he is with his people in the time of Jesus. We've been going through the Gospel of John forever, and it's amazing to me that we're now at the point where Jesus is on trial, and Pilate has decided the crucifixion is happening, and the kingdom, and the thing that really stood out to me, and we talked about this towards the end of class. I'm sorry, I don't want to dig in too deep because some of you are like, why do I even go to Bible class? But really stood out to me was this: we have no king, only Caesar. It's funny to me that God loved his people enough that he sent Jesus to die for those who fully have rejected God as their king and who are so lost that they would even dare say that Caesar is their king. And yet God is still with them. God chooses to love his people who continuously disobey and walk away every moment. But that should give us hope. Because if we're to break it down, something like this: God brings security to Ahaz, and he brings security to those who believe in the one who he sent, Jesus Christ. And I do believe that God brings security and reminds us that he is with us today in the year 2025. Don't ask me what the date is, because I don't know. But God is with us. And that means that God will always find a way to protect and love his people. God will use people no matter who they are, where they come from, what their background is, whether they're a believer or not a believer. God will use them to help protect and guide his people to where they need to be. Because isn't it interesting that God used Assyria? I cannot say they were Jewish believers in the God Yahweh, but God still used them. God, and of course, people complained about God using the Assyrians because they were not the best rulers. And then God used the Babylonians to take care of the Assyrians. And then eventually, God used the Persians to deal with the Babylonians. And it goes so on and so on and so on. God will use people to help protect and guide. And realistically, sometimes protecting is being punished a little bit, right? Sometimes it's you've got to work through your own stupidity. You put yourself into this situation. Now you need to sit in a timeout, so to speak, and understand, hey, maybe what I've been doing or thinking is wrong. And so God will use people to move his people to those who believe or as I said, who have accepted Christ. Remember my definition from this earlier, to be where God needs them to be. Because if you sit here and think that the moment you are baptized, that you are the exact person that God needs you to be at the end of your life, hate to say it, you're crazy. Because we are growing into the image of God, and that happens every day. And I believe God places people and things in our lives to shape us and mold us to be who God has called us to be. And what does that mean then? That God is with us. And that means God will always be with his church. It may not feel like it. It may feel like we're far away. We may feel like King Ahaz at times, and we feel like the world is out to destroy Christianity. And yet, God is still with us. And that also means that we do not need to fear and we do not need to worry about all of these crazy things that are happening out there. And some of you are like, well, Darren, we have to. You've got to do that. Oh my goodness. Guys, I am getting gray hair, okay? And I'm sick and tired of worrying, and I'm sick and tired of all of these things that I am concerned about that are out of my control. But you know whose control it is? It's God's. We could sit there and worry. We could sit there and panic about whatever extreme is your flavor of the week. Or we could sit there and worry about the things that are going on in your personal life that are making you wonder, God, are you even there? Because let's face it, we have people who worry about the country aspect. But let's be honest, there are many of us who are worrying about how we're going to make ends meet. We've had people who are stuck in furlough who have been wondering, when am I going to get to go back to work? We have people who are sitting there and maybe watching on live stream wondering, is their marriage even going to work? We have people who are dealing with far worse problems than what the world says we should think about. Well, guys, I want to tell you that God is with you too. And when we're walking through the fire, I promise you, we have a God who walks beside us. That may not mean that it feels good in the moment. But before the baby can even know right or wrong, it will be in the past. These things that we are so concerned and worried about right now, the things that are keeping us up at night, they're not forever. Because I do believe in a God who carries us through all the high moments in our life and all of the low moments in our life. And we do not have to walk alone. So we don't need to fear or worry, but what we do need to have is hope. And it's not the hope that I hope my sports team wins, but it's the hope that we have certainty of the promises of God. That God will come through. God has a plan, and He knows how He's going to get you there. Unfortunately, when God gives you a call on your life, He never lays out the whole roadmap for you. Because then you wouldn't need to trust Him. It would just be, okay, you've told me what's going to happen, I'll do it. But God says we need to trust Him. And when God places people and He places moments in our lives to help us through these difficult moments and these difficult times, because I know that's what God does, we have an option right then and there. Do we accept God or do we reject God? Church, I truly don't believe God leaves us. I think we leave God. But God's still there waiting for you to come back. Because God is with us. So we need to have hope. And what that means is we have hope for what we know to be true, that God will provide a way. It may not feel good. You may deal with some issues and some struggles, whatever that may be, but He does have a plan for your life. And when we are going through those moments when we have uncertainty, we must strive to seek the joy that points to Immanuel. The joy that points to Jesus who decided that being in equality with God was not something to be grasped, but instead He decided to make Himself nothing. He humbled Himself to that of a slave, and becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. That God exalted Him to the highest place, that at the name of Jesus, every tongue will confess and acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. When we are going through trials, when we are going through struggles, we can choose to have hope and joy. In the same way that it's so easy for us to choose worry and fear. I don't know about y'all, but I am sick and tired of worry and fear. I feel like it's been a fear sandwich for the last near decade. I don't know if it's been a decade. It feels like a decade. Does that count? So guys, let's choose hope and joy. And I want to remind you guys of verses 15 through 16 as we get ready to close. He will be eating curds and honey when he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right. For before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid to waste. This too will pass. Because you want to know why? The beautiful thing about the Bible is we know how it ends. And at the end of the day, God is still on the throne, no matter what the world tries to tell us. And we know there are moments where this too will pass and then the next thing will come. And guess what's going to happen when the next disaster comes? That will pass as well. Remember that God is with us no matter where you may be. And we can have hope and joy in that.